why Patrick's rock was the only logical winner.
Great
Lucky.
Snail Race, SpongeBob, Squidward, and Patrick participate in the snail race. Squidward enters with his purebred racing snail Snelly. SpongeBob enters with Gary, and Patrick signs up his pet rock, Rocky. And despite all the odds, it is the rock with the nerves of steel that wins. I don't think that win was an accident though. I think it was earned, and once you look...
We don't know how he's going to explain this. It's a fucking rock. It's a rock, right? How is a rock going to be even a snail, the slowest animal there is, at least in cartoons? How is a rock going to be?
At what each of them actually brought
How is it
into that
logical?
race, it starts to look less like a fluke and more like the only possible outcome. Let's start from the beginning. Right at the start, we see that Squidward, SpongeBob, and Patrick each take a vastly different approach to the snail race. Their different understandings of the snail race are evident in their preparation phases. Squidward. As the German watcher, it's super hard for me to not call him Thaddeus, but anyway. Squidward bets on Snelly's pedigree, or innate talent. While this seems like the most shallow approach, it's a proven one. In real-life horse racing, pedigrees are a cornerstone of the sport. Only the most successful and physically strongest horses are allowed to breed with each other and pass on their genes. The goal is to birth the strongest,
I already
most
know. I already
durable
like not
offspring
finished on what he's
possible.
talking about.
It even goes so far
What
that
is he
horse
talking-
trainers basically pimp out their horses to other horses for huge sums of money. With Squidward's overall snobby character, it would make sense that these are the aspects he would pay most attention to. He was even ready to pay $1,700 for Snelly, which is a lot for someone whose salary is sometimes even in the minus. At least Snelly comes with a certificate. Philosophers and diplomats have argued about the existence of innate talent for centuries.
How does that have to do with the
Plato,
rock?
for
though?
example, is convinced that talent is a memory of the soul. Descartes is sure that talent is as much part of the DNA as a genetic illness, and Aristotle sees every person as a blank slate. Talent is born through habit and training, in his opinion. There's no denying that Snelly has the physical edge over Gary and Rocky though. Compared to innate talent, a physical disposition can clearly...
Okay, so I understand where the fuck her name was is better than Gary, right? How does that make it logical for the rock to win? No, just explain that.
be inherited. If Snelly possesses the mental talent of racing or the footwork is something we can only judge partially, but I will be going over that during the race part of this analysis. We don't know any specifics about Snelly's ancestry or her own accomplishments, or if she even participated in a race before. Squidward emphasized Snelly's ancestry at every turn, and equally focuses on Gary's ancestry, repeatedly calling him a mutt, which is somewhat true. His belief in Snelly's physical and genetic superiority goes so far that Squidward doesn't seem it necessary to train Snelly before the race. This could have taken place off-screen, but judging from Squidward's pride in Snelly, we can assume that Snelly was already trained for the race beforehand. Snelly's chances at winning are estimated at a staggering 99.4%, which coincidentally is the same
Like, we're
number
still
of
not
people
really
who
getting
watch
into
this video
the-
while not being subscribed to the channel. So if
Like, we're not really getting into the title of the video yet. Like, we're getting more into the snails.
you
but-
enjoyed the video so far,
Hear
please
him out.
consider
Hear him.
changing that and subscribe, maybe even leave a comment, like or dislike if you don't like the video. And also check the description for more. Thank you. SpongeBob takes a route of hard work. Once again, it is very fitting for his character. Overcoming any obstacle through hard work and positivity is a very romantic and optimistic mindset. SpongeBob does not accept Squidward's arrogance and defends his pet from the insults. SpongeBob's approach is very Nietzschean. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Do not talk about giftedness in born talents. One can name great men of all kinds who were very little gifted. They acquired greatness, became geniuses, as we put it. They all possessed that diligent seriousness of
In
a
philosophy.
craftsman who first learns to
Philosophy?
form the parts perfectly before he ventures to make a whole." According to Nietzsche,
Don't know what I said.
greatness comes from endurance and being
give up.
tenacious. Even untalented individuals can work hard and become geniuses in their respective fields by
Philosophical.
focusing
Reading
on the
philosophical.
fundamentals before diving into the
Got it, I got
aspects
that
that
too.
complete the work. American philosopher Will Durant also said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Greatness requires time and does not come from a single breakthrough. Aside from time, it also needs dedication." This is also the part where the
Yo, I'm not even gonna lie. I'm more locked in on this background game he's playing.
disconnect between SpongeBob and Gary takes place. We can assume that SpongeBob would have never signed up for the snail race if it wasn't for Squidward. SpongeBob's entire motivation was to prove Squidward wrong, not for himself, but for his dear pet that was insulted. A friendly rivalry is often seen as a way to improve, especially between friends. Nietzsche once said, "In one's friend, one shall have one's best enemy." And in the one-sided friendship between SpongeBob and Squidward,
Okay, so far we're getting into why the female snail would beat Gary. We haven't really gone into why the rock would.
that is true.
You were
However,
saying-
this
Point it out.
rivalry quickly dwarfed Squidward's comments about Gary, because Gary never cared about it at all. Gary remained stoic. SpongeBob started to force Gary into a strict training regimen. This is where we see the dark side of hard work, futile obsession. SpongeBob lost his original goal and assumed the role of a trainer. Gary never wanted this, but it is SpongeBob who disregards Gary's limits. Gary even pleaded that SpongeBob was pushing it too hard and that SpongeBob wasn't listening to him. Right at the start of the race, we see Gary approaching the starting line, utterly exhausted, physically and perhaps mentally broken. We will see how this affected the race later. Last, but definitely not least, we have Patrick and Rocky, who have the most unique approach to the race: blind faith and ignorance. When SpongeBob and Squidward were establishing their rivalry at the beginning of their episode, Patrick also decided to join the race with Rocky. However, nobody was taking Patrick or his pet seriously, and this is where their biggest strength lies. This made their victory inevitable. Not only were
Yeah,
they
they were too confident. They were like, this rock ain't gonna move, but it did.
underdogs nobody paid attention to,
Mhm.
Patrick was
It's
also
all coming
oblivious that the odds were stacked against them. Whenever someone would point out that Rocky is just a rock, he would always answer with appreciation and direct the praise towards Rocky and his nerves of steel. We can already see that during the preparation phase, Patrick and Rocky's bond relies on mutual understanding. Patrick shows consideration that Squidward and especially SpongeBob, during his trainer phase at least, were lacking. We also see that again later during the race. But before we get there, let's talk about the other reasons why Patrick and Rocky won before even getting to the starting line. French movie maker Marcel Pagnol once said, "Everyone knew it was
What
impossible,
a quotes.
and Ignoramus didn't know it. He did it, and the roles are pretty clear. Everyone here are SpongeBob and Squidward, who don't even consider Patrick to be a part of this spontaneous rivalry. Patrick is the ignoramus. All Patrick knows is that the first snail that crosses the finish line
Yes.
wins. He has no clue about snail racing, racing pedigrees, or training regimens. There is even a case to be made that he doesn't even know what a snail is. Patrick reduced his focus to the only necessary aspects, which saves himself and his pet from additional mental stress and unnecessary choice paralysis. He stripped down the task and the goal to the
Yeah,
bare
low cholesterol.
minimum. While
That's what it was.
SpongeBob and Squidward were busy with their rivalry and completely disregarded Patrick because him winning was not only improbable, it was absurd to them. Patrick was not bothered. In fact, the possibility of failure wasn't even on his mind. The Roman poet Virgil once said, "Possunt quia posse vendetur," which means they can because they think they can. Patrick didn't think about failure or if winning is a possibility. His approach was ignorant of the obstacles and even logic itself. He and Rocky just did it.
They
We
were
can't
chilling.
be certain about how Patrick prepared Rocky for the race, but from their interactions we can see that Patrick respected and took great care of Rocky. We can't be sure that Patrick and Rocky didn't go through rigorous physical training, nor do we know about Rocky's ancestry, but there is a sign that Patrick,
think The Rock
perhaps
has
even
ancestry, what?
unknowingly, applied high-level sport psychology in Rocky's training. I will explain during the race. The race begins,
Pretty sure he gets
and we
lost in
can
that,
see the result of
Pretty sure it's lost in that background game he's playing, but
each of the three strategies. Snelly is well rested and ready for the race. Gary is physically exhausted and in the worst shape of his life, and Rocky is unshaken. With the starting shot, we can see Snelly is taking the lead, as expected. The purebred racing ancestry immediately makes itself known. What's more interesting, we see that Gary is unfit to even get started. Egged on and even verbally abused by his trainer, Gary gets going as well. This is where we see Patrick's strength in sports mentality. Instead of yelling at his pet, Patrick reassures Rocky to take his time and only go when he feels like it. This could be positive reassurance or a stone cold tactic to strike when nobody expects it. After Gary gets going, we see that SpongeBob made horrible miscalculations. The training plan was way too strenuous for Gary for such a short amount of time and ultimately resulted in Gary crashing, leaving him unable to finish the race. At least the trainer saw his mistake and ran on track to take care of his pet, knowing he would get disqualified. Meanwhile, Snelly was about to win the race in a distant first place, but unexpectedly showed pity and maybe a bit more towards her competitor. You never know when love strikes, and sometimes it's in the middle of the track field. Don't let this heartwarming moment distract you. The race isn't finished. While all the eyes were glued on Gary and Snelly's moment, Rocky finished the race in first place. It's honorable and a great show of sportsmanship for Snelly to take care of her rivals, but in the end, competition is competition, and Rocky finished first with his stone
Yeah, Patrick and Rocky the GOAT.
cold killer mentality.
Add that.
Gary's failures
Add
were
that.
obvious, and Snelly's racing genes didn't help either when compassion gets in the way. But how did Rocky actually win the race? He isn't as physically gifted as Snelly, he also didn't work hard. He might be the smartest among the three, but one thing is for certain. He was the strongest when it came to willpower. He was laser focused on the victory, and that's what separated him from Snelly. Snelly gave in to her impulses, but Rocky stayed steady as a rock. He could have helped Gary as well, but in the face of the competition, Rocky took a lesson out of Epictetus' teachings. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Or how Patrick puts it, Rocky has nerves of steel. Either that or I pulled
Rocky's the
all of
GOAT.
that out
That's
of my...
what it is. And with that, you know, slow start, you know, didn't really get into it very fast. I think he made it around to the end. Go ahead, like, subscribe. We did 6 reacts today, so now we're gonna get into game.